Jai Hind, Namaste, hello and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav and in this video we'll be discussing the Hindu and Indian Express for the date 2nd of November 2020. Now for your convenience, I have added timestamps in the description. So if you want to skip to a particular news, please use those timestamps. And also free PDFs for selected topics are available on my Telegram channel, the link to which is in the description. And if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we post. And please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. So without wasting your time, let's get started. So starting with the Hindu, GST inflows crossed 1 lakh crore in October. So if you remember, even in September, there was a record collection of about 90,000 crore and now it has crossed 1 lakh crore. But the economists and the businesses are cautious about the sustainability of this trend because this trend is happening because of the opening up of manufacturing and other activities in the economy. But sustainability of this in the long term is questionable. Then car makers rev up for Diwali, so they are hopeful for huge sales. Active cases are falling as per the Ministry of Health, but then again you should take precautions because we don't really know if this virus might mutate during the winter. Then local visitors filled tourist space in Kaziranga. So because of the pandemic, domestic and foreign travelers have kept away from this Kaziranga National Park and Tiger Reserve. So the locals are helping this to earn revenue, right? So local economy, you could use it as an example. Then page 6 editorial, the shifting trajectory of India's foreign policy. This is by Mr. M.K. Narayanan. He was ex-NSA, right? Now he was an NSA under the Congress regime. So he is pro-Congress, if you might say. So he has always a negative or sort of a conservative view about the foreign policy pursued by New Delhi. He has given his views. Now I don't personally subscribe to what he's saying right now. But as an individual, you should be exposed to every kind of opinion and then you should be forming your own opinion. So that is why I'm discussing this one. So this is about our latest 2+2. So let us see what he's saying. Now basically his opinions, they reflect the old guard in our country, which were very, very cautious when it came to China. So that is what the problem is. Let us see what he's saying. So first of all, he says that these deals are an advantage, but they come at a price. There is merit in this point that access to classified info could compromise the strategic autonomy we signed because of the China factor. That is true. This violates our principle of neutrality as per Mr. Narayanan. Now he says this has impact on China and regional ties. This Quad is quintessentially an anti-China foreign policy, right? And signing the agreement sends a clear signal to China that India has definitely taken sides. Now, India would be better placed, he says, that if it worked on the dwindling influence in the neighborhood. Again, there is merit in this point. I'm not saying that it is completely true, but we should also be working on our dwindling influence in the neighborhood, both immediate and extended. Now, talking about immediate and extended, what are the problems? We are having differences with our neighbors, especially when you look at Nepal, right? Neighbors like Nepal. Then inroads by China and US in our strategic backyard in this whole South Asian region, right? And then he also sounds caution on our West Asia policy because we are coming closer to Israel, but at the same time, we are drifting apart from Iran. So that could be a problem. Then also he's cautioning about Afghanistan and NAM. Now he says to manage Afghan relations without getting sucked into the conflict would be a challenge, especially when US is pulling out of Afghanistan. So we really have to be cautious about our Afghan policy. Then he says that we also have to manage membership at the SCO, because the leaders of SCO are China and Russia and both are adversaries of USA. Now you forget about China, but Russia is very, very important for India. So India has to manage relations with Russia. Then he talks about NAM, which is more or less outdated in the present geopolitical scenario. But then again, old guard. So he's taking that India has taken a detached outlook towards NAM. There has been great distance from African and Latin American groups, and India could be sidesteps which would come as a shock. Finally, he talks about Russian link. He says that there has been a downslide in our relations with Russia since 2014. Now, this is not entirely true. Why? Because Russia has been having a huge rift with the US, right? And that is pushing Russia towards a friendship with China. It has nothing to do with us, right? And I've told you, Russia always practices a multi-vector diplomacy, right? That it always maintains balance. It is not as if Russia is going for relations with China at the cost of relations with India. There are talks that Russia is going to form a military alliance with China, But even after all of that, Russia is still supplying us all the critical technology and weapons. Similarly, we have not budged under the US pressure. We are still buying the S-400. Now he's saying it could further suffer because of the perceived closeness with US. Now there is some merit, but our diplomats and our diplomacy is smart enough to establish a balance with Russia. Then this one, signs of easing. India's COVID trajectory shows a downward trend, but there is no room for complacency. So some points that it is quite clear that pandemic has peaked by spreading through the major densely populated cities, leaving lakhs infected and thousands dead. But there is definite slowing down in these areas. Now, he's saying that it is not clear whether this same trend is happening in the rural setting because the protocols for testing, treatment, isolation are not diligently followed because of gaps in rural health infrastructure across states. So this is exactly what is happening. This is something state health departments need to follow up. Now there is evidence from other disease surveillance in the past that states with better primary health and sentinel infrastructure across topographies, urban and rural, have recorded diseases better. So this is all that you need to know from this. Then a fierce contest as US prepares for the election, a wrangle over results is increasingly likely. So recently Mr. Trump was asked whether he would transfer power if he loses election peacefully. To that, Mr. Trump replied he's not sure. Why? Because he's making allegations against the election rules that have changed and more specifically about the postal ballot that is being used in different states. So he's saying that there is a huge possibility that there could be manipulation of these votes through postal ballots. So in all likelihood, if he loses or if the margin of his loss is less, then we could see a case in the US Supreme Court. It has happened in the year 2000 as well when George W. Bush won the election, right? So there is a possibility that this will happen. So the pandemic has resulted in a massive shift in balance of voting methods towards early voting, mail-in voting and absentee voting. Mr. Trump has attacked mail-in voting with factually unfounded claims regarding potential for fraud and democratic conspiracy. The stage will be set for Mr. Trump to formally allege voting fraud and escalate the matter to the Supreme Court, a court that did not hesitate on ruling on the 2000 election favoring Republican George W. Bush. And this is all the more important because Amy Coney Barrett, she has been selected as the judge of the Supreme Court and she's also conservative. So now the conservative judge have 6-3 majority in the court. So they could be favoring Mr. Trump or the Republicans when it comes to that. But then again, these are just speculations. Let the results come. And if the case goes to the Supreme Court, then only we can tell what is going to happen. Then page 7, a secure future for platform workers. So there is a strong case to attribute a more robust responsibility to platform companies and the state. So this is an article by Lakshmi Sharma. She's making some important points. Let us look at them. So she begins by telling us that the Code on Security Bill, for the first time in Indian law, attempts to define the platform work. Now, platform work is some work arrangement which is outside the traditional employer-employee relationship. Basically, what happens when organizations or individuals, they use some app or website to access each other or to services or any other thing which is notified by the central government. For example, you book a cab on Ola. Now, Ola or Uber is just an aggregator. They don't really own the cabs. Similarly, when you order food from Swiggy or Food Panda, again, Swiggy and Food Panda, they do not run restaurants, but they just enable the delivery. So this type of work is known as platform work. So all the delivery boys are working in the platform work. Now there is a criticism for this definition from Platform Workers Association because it fails to delineate it from gig work and unorganized work. Now she also says that there is an ongoing global conversation on platform workers' rights, and that has been centered around misclassification of platform workers as independent contractors. Now see, there's a difference between independent contractor and a platform worker, because independent contractor, generally they are well-to-do and they have a better bargaining power. That is not the case for platform workers. Now she also informs us about some positive development in Ontario and California. They have been granted employee status, these platform workers, thus guaranteeing them minimum wage and welfare benefits. Now she also tells us what is the pull factor towards the platforms. So number one, because it promises workers flexibility and ownership over the delivery of work, they are attracted towards it. but their working conditions or the deliveries that they get, it is still dictated by the algorithm. So there is a kind of an uncertainty over there. Then number 2, she tells that you need finances to enter this platform economy. For example, you want to run a cab, right? So you would want to buy a cab, you'd have to buy a cab. Or if you want to be a delivery boy, you'd have to invest in a bike, right? So most of the times these people, they don't have money. So they get loans which are facilitated by the aggregator companies. So they are tied, right? Their financial freedom is tied and they're tied to these companies. So in the short to medium term, they don't have any flexibility or freedom, right? So this loss of financial freedom makes flexibility and ownership moot. But for specific categories of workers, for example, there are well-to-do farmers. If you look at any big city, the areas around them, there are many well-to-do farmers who don't have much education. So they enter into this business because buying a cab or buying a bike is easier for them. So this is what she's telling. So they have basic access to capital. So the flexibility of platform is a significant attraction for such people. Then she talks about joint responsibility, that the basic welfare measures are a joint responsibility between the center government, platform aggregators and workers, right? But this code does not state which stakeholder is responsible for delivering what quantum of welfare. But as we discussed earlier, the ministry is calling in different stakeholders, including these platform aggregators, to discuss who has what kind of responsibility, because we precisely discussed that fact that there might be a platform worker who's working for different platforms. So how to go about it, how to ensure their social welfare, this would be decided by the ministry. They are working on it. So she says a tripartite effort by the state, companies and workers to identify where workers fall on the spectrum of flexibility and dependence on platform companies is very, very important. So any solution has to be a tripartite solution. Now she also lauds their role during epidemic, and yes, very, very important role they have played. Because of them, we have been able to get stuff delivered to our homes in the safety of our homes, and these people are in the front line, right? So they have established themselves as public infrastructure who also sustain demand-driven aggregators. True, had there been no platform workers, these aggregators would have crumbled, right? So she says it merits a jointly assumed responsibility by public and private institutions to deliver welfare measures, rightly said, right? So this is what she is saying in this editorial. Now page 9, Gilgit-Baltistan, a part of India, says Ministry of External Affairs. So we know the joke of a country called Pakistan and their clown of a Prime Minister Imran Khan. They have decided to conduct elections in Gilgit-Baltistan and to formally join the region into the Pakistani state. So the Ministry of External Affairs has come out heavily with statements. So these are the statements. Basically, they are saying that this region is under illegal and forcible occupation by Islamabad and it should immediately vacate these areas. Gilgit-Baltistan is an integral part of India by virtue of legal, complete and irrevocable accession of Jammu and Kashmir to the Union of India in 1947. And the government of Pakistan and courts of Pakistan, they do not have any locus standi, right, on any matter related to POK and Gilgit-Baltistan, right, on territories illegally and forcefully occupied by it. And the latest move would not be able to hide the grave human rights violations in these POK territories. Now, how they are doing so? This is basically about a 2018 administrative order. It is called Gilgit-Baltistan Order of 2018, which provided for administrative changes, including authorizing the Prime Minister of Pakistan to legislate on any array of subjects for Gilgit-Baltistan, right? Please ignore this. Now, what happened? Under this orders, Mr. Imran Khan, he announced holding elections. Then it was challenged in the court and the Pakistan Supreme Court allowed this amendment and allowed the Pakistani government to conduct general elections. So once general elections are conducted, so it will be a legal part of Pakistan. Now, this is what is happening. But if you remember, we discussed an editorial earlier, which was telling us about why Pakistan is doing so, why it did not do so earlier. So we'll quickly go through it again. So why Pakistan did not do so earlier? Because it wanted to keep the status of Gilgit-Baltistan and POK in a flux, to maintain international pressure on India and to say that it is an disputed territory and there should be a plebiscite, right? This is what has been its stand. Now, why change the status now? Number one, Pakistan would copy its father, India. So as India revoked Article 370 and split the state into two UTs. So Pakistan is also trying to do something on the similar lines. Number two is the public opinion in Gilgit-Baltistan. The population in Gilgit-Baltistan is predominantly Shia and they are ethnically distinct from people in POK. So they have been always asking for full integration into Pakistan. Now Pakistan or Islamabad feels by declaring it a province will assuage domestic dissatisfaction, and the domestic dissatisfaction is very high in Pakistan given all the political rallies, right? Now third is the most interesting one, that Pakistan's illegitimate father China has been encouraging Pakistan to turn Gilgit-Baltistan into a province. Now there are some reasons for that. Number one, I've already told you that CPEC runs through this region. So if any change in status, that would basically jeopardize China's investment. For example, if there is a big case in the UN in future, and if that territory goes back to India or there are some changes in status quo, it would hurt Chinese investments, right? Number two, China also wants to repay India. So what India did, it made Ladakh into a UT, right? Including Aksai Chin, and our home minister said that we will take each and every inch of our territory back. That was the statement in the parliament, and that really riled the Chinese, right? Now Chinese think that making Ladakh a union territory is the first step of India towards attempting to enforce its claim on Aksai Chin, something which China cannot digest. Why? I've told you, Chinese Highway 219, which runs through Aksai Chin and it connects Xinjiang in Tibet, very important for China. So China cannot afford to lose either Gilgit-Baltistan or Aksai Chin, right? Number three, China wants to put its troops in Gilgit-Baltistan because it considers it a very important strategic location. If you remember, I told you China would be trying to convince Pakistan that they would open a true front war with India. Let me show you. So this is Aksai Chin, China controlled, and Gilgit-Baltistan for practical purposes, China controlled. Shaksgam Valley is already under Chinese control. So if this standoff worsens, then China could be opening a two-front situation for us. One attack from this side and the other from this side, right? This would be the bargaining chip it would be giving to Pakistan to basically station its troops there. And Pakistan would be more than happy because Pakistan wants nothing but destruction of India. So this is the important for this region. Now, if this region becomes an integral part of Pakistan, official part of Pakistan, then China can legitimately station its troops here. There would be less of international friction regarding China's presence, the troop presence in this area. Now, as I was telling you, this is China National Highway 219. It connects Xinjiang to Tibet. So this is very important. So China would not let this Aksai Chin go away. As a matter of fact, control over Aksai Chin was one of the reasons for War of 1962. China built this highway in 1957. If you've seen my earlier videos, I've discussed this in detail, right? And second is the CPECC. This is running through Gilgit-Baltistan. So any threat to the status of Gilgit-Baltistan, if it were to go to India or any change in it, any international litigation could put this huge investment of around $40 to $60 billion by China into jeopardy. So that is why China is pushing Pakistan to declare Gilgit-Baltistan as an official part of Pakistan. And this Shaksgam Valley, already Pakistan ceded to China in 1963, right? And I've also told you how China would be luring Pakistan with an offer of opening a two-front war against India, right? So it is both advantage China and also a lure for Pakistan. And that is why Pakistan would allow China to put its troops here. And from here, China could be looking at launching a two-front attack on India if this standoff continues for long, right? Then page number 10, just the headlines. Bank told to pay back interest on interest, says RBI. Assam-Mizoram border standoff continues. Then 3 new Rafales jet to fly non-stop from France to India. So earlier 5 came in, right? And we inducted them in number 7 Golden Arrow Squadron at Ambala. Now there would be a second squadron. Total we have ordered 36 aircraft. Now 3 more are coming and the new squadron would be based in Hasimara in West Bengal. See, now there are strategic reasons. The one in Ambala, they would basically cater to the LOC region, right? And also the northwest border and the northern sector of the LAC, right? This will greatly enhance our capability of deploying our fighter jets. And this one in West Bengal, it would basically enhance our capability to deploy these jets on the eastern edge of the LAC, right? The LAC that runs along the Arunachal, and that is also a highly disputed sector. Right now it is relatively calm, but there would be some problems in future. So India is just making sure that when that happens, we are ready. So that is why we are making two strategic locations for our squadrons. Number one at Ambala and other is at Hasimara in West Bengal. Then file FIRs for cyber crimes, state told. So the Union Home Ministry has written to all states to examine and register FIRs based on complaints received on the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. So this is an online portal which was launched in 2019 to help people report all kinds of cyber crimes on the centralized platform. Once they do, the respective state governments and the respective district police, they would be filing cases and then they would be conducting investigation. That was the whole purpose of that. But states are not following through because as per the data available with the ministry, only 2.5% of total complaints registered are being converted into FIRs. Now, why don't the states convert complaints into FIRs, or why do police have such a big problem in filing FIR? Because once an FIR is filed, then it goes to the court and the whole process becomes very cumbersome, and it also reflects badly on their crime statistics, right? Every state, district or police station would like to keep its FIRs at a minimum level so that on paper it seems like they are facing no crime. So these are the reasons why they are so hesitant in filing FIRs, especially the police officials. They are not well trained for dealing with cyber crimes. So there is greater resistance among them for filing these FIRs, right? Because they would have to do extra work to basically investigate into such crimes. So the rate of conversion is very, very low. Now this portal also provides for cybercrime volunteers who would basically flag unlawful content on internet, and to enlist as one, you need to submit your photograph, name and address proof. Now what is the unlawful content? It has been categorized as against the sovereignty and integrity of India, against defense of India, security of India, friendly relations with foreign states, disturbing public order, disturbing communal harmony. So these all points are basically under Article 19 Clause 2 of your right to freedom of speech and expression. These are the reasonable restrictions. So these points are on those lines only. Just a connection for you guys. Then finally, child sex abuse material. And as a matter of fact, this portal, it began as an online portal for complaints specifically for child sex abuse material. And then it was later expanded to cover all kinds of cyber crimes. Now, rising number of crimes. As per the NCRB report, in 2019 as compared to 2018, there was a 63.5% jump in registered cyber crimes. Now registered, so unregistered would be way above this registered, because only 2.5% you see the rate of converting complaints into FIRs. Helpline for victims. So they have also launched a helpline for victims, but right now only for victims of financial cyber fraud in Delhi. Once the complaint is received, the designated police officer, after verifying the matter, will report to the bank and financial intermediary or payment wallet for blocking the money involved. So this is very important for your GS paper 3, cyber crimes and cyber fraud. Then security forces unfurled tricolour in former Maoist heartland. BSF Odisha police reclaim Gura Sethu from extremists. So let me first show you on the map. This is the region. This was cut off and this was a Maoist hotbed. The Maoists, they conducted all their training operations. They also had built buildings and whatnot there. Basically what really changed was a Gura Sethu bridge which enabled the access of security forces to this region, and then they could counter the Maoists in this region. Now see, because of this Guru Priya bridge, there is a proper BSF camp in this region. And this is the location. This is basically Odisha, the tip, and it is a border between Andhra and Odisha. Now let us get back to it. So the BSF and the Odisha police have set up a company operation base at Gura Sethu, dubbed the ideological headquarters of the Communist Party of India, Maoist, which is an outlawed organization in Swabhiman Achal along the Odisha Andhra Pradesh border. I've already shown you. Let me show you again. This is Odisha Andhra Pradesh border, this region, right? This is considered a milestone in fight against the left-wing extremists. Remote area, Gura Sethu was once also known to be the heartland of the CPI Maoists. The ultras used to conduct training and other activities without fear. As the place was not easily accessible, security forces had to trek to reach the place. Then the Swabhiman Anchal, erstwhile a cut-off area, has been the bastion of CPI Maoists. The area remained cut off from Malkangiri till the Guru Priya River Bridge was constructed in 2018. So basically this is Malkangiri main and this is the cut-off region, right? In the tip, just the tip, right? This is Malkangiri, hotbed of Maoist activity, and this is the tip where this region was. And because of the bridge on the Guru Priya River, now security forces have reached there. Malkangiri has been one of the worst affected districts within 332 Maoist incidents recorded between 2008 and 20. Now see, this is the map of India's most Maoist conflict districts. The reddish shows the highly affected, then the orangish is moderate and green is marginally affected. So you see there are hotbeds in two states, Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, right? And this region especially. Then page 13, more ups and downs in India ties. So basically tomorrow, 3rd of November would be the final day of polling in the US. And then on 20th, we'll get to know who is the new president. If all goes well, if there are no petitions in the Supreme Court of US, right? So this is basically tracing the evolution of India-US relations under Mr. Trump. So it says initially there were problems and our diplomats had to use the back-end channels, including prominent Indian Americans, to basically get an access to President Trump because he was not in favor of talking to India initially. Then within a few months of taking office, he delivered some blows to India's expectations. What were those? Number one, visa restrictions. Then he clubbed India in the US-China tariff conflict and it called India as the tariff king. Then he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, which was legacy of Obama. Now under this accord, we were expecting some funding and resources from the US, but Trump pulled out of it. And again, he blamed developing countries, including India, as being the problem, right? Then it all started to change when our PM Modi visited White House in June 2017. And after that, there was a reversal in Trump's policies towards India. There was US's decision to revive the Quad and rename its Pacific Command as Indo-Pacific Command, set into motion a more positive foreign policy framework for India. And over just 3 or 4 months in 2018, we saw Strategic Trade Authorization STA1 categorization for India, which basically enabled us to buy critical technology from US defense technology. Then the first 2+2 dialogue that happened in 2018, right? The signing of Comcasa in a shape acceptable to us. All the 4 foundational agreements that we have signed with US, they all have been modified as per our specifications, right? Then the approval by Congress for a general waiver provision in the CATSA. This is a temporary waiver. Now CATSA basically are the sanctions on Iran. So we have got waiver, and even before coming to the 2+2, US assured India that they won't be imposing any waivers when it comes to India helping Afghanistan using Iran route and for development of Chabar, right? Then about China and Pakistan. So Trump took a very aggressive stand against Pakistan. He said that they are liars. They don't give us anything. That country is a safe haven for terrorists. Then he suspended military assistance payments to Pakistan. He also led the way for Pakistan's grey listing at FATF, right? And also with China, for the initial 2 years, he tried to reach out to Xi Jinping. Then he made a turnaround. Then he offered India moral and military support to counter Chinese aggression. It led its own attack on China's Belt and Road Initiative and its 5G telecom push, and vowed to counter China's loans to countries in the Indo-Pacific region. And for that, they have also launched the Blue Dot Initiative network, right? But then there were several decisions, because you never know Trump, that came as a shock to us. He decided to talk to Taliban, right? And he gave a very important role to Pakistan in that and did not take us on board. So that was a shock to us. Then last year when Mr. Modi swore in his new cabinet, he basically revoked GSP status for Indian exporters. Now under this status, they were getting tax rebates. So he revoked that. So this was again a friction in the relationship. Then unpredictable attacks. So basically what he's telling is that Mr. Trump has been leaking out the private conversations between him and PM Modi. But India never retaliated or never publicly countered Mr. Trump. So that has actually paid off. How? So he also showed reciprocal restraint while commenting on India's internal affairs, unlike many other countries and leaders in the American opposition. He has not raised objections to the Modi government's decision to Article 370, the arrest of leaders and telecom ban in Kashmir, or on the CAA. So overall, it has been a mixed bag, but things changed from 2017, personal repertoire, and you can say that Mr. Trump has been more or less favorable for India. Now let's see what happens, right? Then this one, America beyond election day. So basically it's telling that regardless of who wins, there would be some continuity and conflicts in the policies. So he tells about 3 points of continuity and 3 points of conflict. Let us look at them. Now in terms of continuity, he says that there are 3 points of broad agreement and are themselves riddled with divergent approaches of both parties on each of the topics. So they agree on these 3 big points, but there is divergence as to how to approach them. Number 1 is control over big tech. Both agree, and if you remember, we have been discussing about the bipartisan committee which has been pulling up these big tech companies. So the Democrats thought that these big tech companies would usher in more democracy, but they realized that they have become a tool for meddling in the democratic processes, and the Republicans are angry with big tech because they are selectively banning or censoring the political leaders, especially those belonging to the Republican Party, including President Trump. Then they both believe that national manufacturing has to be protected, even though initially Biden started out saying that there should be more divergence in our manufacturing, but the local political climate in the US, with the loss of jobs, high unemployment, and the rise of the left in the US, now he has also changed his stance, and he's also saying that manufacturing should be revived in America. Now, how much manufacturing would be revived, how they would go about it, that has to be seen. Then finally, both the parties have come to an agreement that China is the biggest adversary for the US. Now, there are also 3 other issues that will deepen the fissures and mobilize angst and diatribe post-election. So number 1 is challenges to the election system. Now you would be surprised to know that unlike India, US does not have a central election authority. In India, we have Election Commission of India, which is responsible for conducting elections for the parliament and the state legislative assemblies, right? So the election system is uniform in India, but that is not the case in US. Different states have different rules and different authorities. So that creates a problem. Number 2, again, you would be surprised to know that in India, we have a voter ID card, but that system is not there in the US. Some states mandate it, some don't. And even if there are voter ID cards in some states, it is not compulsory to carry them to the voting booth. So again, this is a problem given that America is home to so many illegal immigrants, right? So this will also be a problem. Then talking about fraud, this article says that in general, it is said that US election system is fair and there are no frauds, but that is only because till now there has been no inquiry into any sort of election frauds. So this is like saying that it does not exist because they have not really checked about it. So there will be a problem with that. And we also discussed how Mr. Trump could be challenging election results. Then number 2, the role of expertise in public debates and policy making. So this pandemic has basically exposed the role of so-called experts, right? They have been having divergent views on both sides of the spectrum. And then Mr. Trump has also been saying things against Mr. Fauci, right? So there is some problem in that. So this will also come to a big blow and a big debate in the coming days. And finally, the idea of American self, because you see the American society is becoming progressively polarized, right? Racial issues and then right versus left. So the whole idea of American self, what it means to be an American, that is also going to come under challenge in the coming days. So this is what this article is telling. Good one. You can read that though. Then starting with the Indian Express, rupees 1.05 lakh crore GST collections up again, now at 8-month high. So we've already discussed. Then see the kind of people that run for office. After rape, a woman with self-respect will die, Congress chief in Kerala. And there are such people in both Congress, BJP and every other political party that we know. Then just a small news. Antigen test good to rule in patients within 5 days of illness study. So this cross-sectional study was conducted by researchers from AIIMS on 330 patients. It concluded that rapid antigen tests showed an excellent specificity to rule in COVID-19 patients within the first 5 days of illness with moderate sensitivity. So this is all that you need to know from this, right? Specificity means that 100% negative will turn out 100% negative, and sensitivity means that 100% positive will turn out 100% positive. Then just the headline, pollutants from farm fires at 40% season's highest. Then unlike Punjab, Rajasthan bills silent on enforcing MSP except in contract farming. So let us see. So like Punjab, Rajasthan is also bringing its own versions of farm laws to undo or to counter the farm laws brought in by the center. So some provisions, they are silent on MSP. So to counter the center's new farm laws are silent when it comes to enforcing the MSP in sales that take place inside and outside the APMC Mandi mechanism. So the Punjab laws are much more progressive than the Rajasthan ones. One of the bills in Rajasthan does speak about enforcing MSP, but it is only limited to contract farming. The Rajasthan Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Farm Assurance and Farm Services Bill has a provision for punishment for those who compel a farmer to sell his produce below the MSP, but this enforcement is only limited to contract farming. And the other Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Bill states the harassment of farmer will be punishable by imprisonment or fine or both, but does not mention whether purchases below MSP will be deemed as harassment. It does not mention any specific crops as in the case with the law in Punjab. Then MEA Pak move bid to camouflage occupation. So we've discussed this, the move on Gilgit-Baltistan. Now to page 11, the nature of republic. So this is by Mr. Praful Goradia. He's a Rajya Sabha MP. Now he's tracing the evolution of the French secularism model. We know already, let's see the principle of French secularism. Now there are some unique points here, that is why I'm discussing it. So it begins with the nature of the French Republic. The former French president Jacques Chirac, during his tenure, commissioned an expert inquiry into what precisely secularism in practice should be. So for that, he formed a committee under Mr. Bernard Stasi, and it presented its report in December 2003. And based on that, they passed a new law in March 2004. It brought up to date the law of 1905. Now the new law defined three essential principles of French secularism. Number one, freedom of conscience. Number two, equality in law for spiritual and religious belief. And number three, neutrality of political power. In other words, there are in any modern state three sets of relations. A, religion and individual, true. The state and the individual, right. And the state and the religion. Now B, which is the relation between the state and the individual, views the individual as citizen and not as a member of a religious group. That is how it should be. The implication of C is that religion and state function in two separate areas of human activity. Religion helps you in your personal discourse and state guides you in your public discourse, right? And the integrity of A and B is largely determined by the third relationship which separates them, right? Because it is the third relationship that religion and state function in two separate domains. This is very critical for any state if it is not to be a theological state, right? Now the French laws attempted to implement these principles. It had not abolished, please pay attention, the wearing of either Jewish skull cap or Muslim headscarves. He's talking about the 2004 legislation. All it ordained was that the students attending government schools or employees working in government offices must not display religious symbols of a conspicuous nature, which would include even a large cross. So this is not against one particular religion. There is no restriction on wearing any form of dress or display of any religious symbol in the country at large. The state, however, has to maintain absolute neutrality between one religion and another. The French insistence on the absolute separation of church and state goes back to 1905, Article 1 and 2 we'll just discuss. In December that year, a Republican law was passed by the country's National Assembly. Article 1 assures the liberty of conscience. It guaranteed the free exercise of religious beliefs. The only restrictions were decreed in the interest of public order. So whatever you want to believe, that is the fundamental principle for any secular country, that whatever you want to believe, you are free to believe in that. Article 2 states that Republic does not recognize either salaried, paid or subsidies granted to any religious groups. So this is very important because it does not pay any money to any religious group. Now the Stasi report stated that Islam is believed to be incompatible with secularism. This was a provocation in the report and the subsequent passing of the legislation. As far as private employees of schools are concerned, the law is that the will of the institution would prevail and not any idiosyncrasy of the employee. So basically what Mr. Patty was doing, it was not his own personal opinion or his personal agenda. It was the curriculum of the French education system. And that was a lesson on liberty of speech. The intention behind the stipulation is to ensure that there is no discrimination against members of any religion, so that an employer does not avoid the appointment of a scarf wearing woman or a skull cap wearing man. Now he talks about religion, that the rise of Christianity led to the problem of church and state because the Bible recognized the basic duality, the temporal and the spiritual. So Bible said in the spiritual realm, it is the God who's the king, and in temporal realm, that is this worldly affair, the materialistic world, there are different kings. Then the state started saying that the king is the representative of God, and it is not only in Christianity, many religions talk about the kings being representative of God or his shadow, right? So this is the problem. But in Islam, there is no concept of duality. That is what he is saying. Islam, on the other hand, does not separate the temporal form from the spiritual. The ultimate evidence of this was that the caliph, or the representative of Prophet Muhammad, was the spiritual head of the temporal chief rolled into one. So there is no separation of state and religion there. Now he also tells us that US made an attempt to completely separate the religion and state, or the church and the state. The American Constitution contains no reference to God. Article 6 says that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office, any public office. The first amendment of the Constitution, adopted in 1791. So first amendment was in 1791, explicitly said Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So that is the stand of US, and in US it is very difficult to amend the Constitution. India never had a centralized institution to regulate religion, nor did it ever interfere in the running of the state. Islam, on the other hand, we've already discussed, does not separate temporal form from the spiritual. Now, France did not fully separate church and state until the passage of its 1905 law. Today, secularism is a core concept in French constitution, Article 1 of which formally states that France is a secular republic. So it is the Article 1 of the French constitution which states that France is a secular republic. This, however, does not prevent the state from playing an active role in the appointment of Catholic diocesan bishops. So basically, this is a very peculiar thing, that though France is a secular republic, the French president, he appoints the Catholic bishops. Now, the former president Nicolas Sarkozy, he had a different take. He visited Pope, then he publicly acknowledged France's Christian roots, and under him was the law of April 2011 passed, with strong support from political parties as well as Sarkozy, which made it illegal to conceal one's face in public spaces, affecting a few thousand women in France wearing the niqab and burqa. Now see, very important points. Scholar Oliver Roy has argued that the burkini bans and secularist policies of France provoked religious violence, to which Giles Keppel responded that Britain, please pay attention, that Britain has no such policies and suffered a greater number of attacks in 2017 than France. So it is not a ban, right? It is a mentality that has to be controlled, and this extremist ideology that has to be controlled, under which normal people are being misled by some leaders, right? So this is what this editorial is saying. This is important for your paper 2. Comparison of various constitutions. This is also important for your paper 1, paper 2, the issue of secularism, international models. So a very good read. Then directly to page 14, UK government announces 4-week lockdown, says it may last longer. So again, just the headline. See, there are many editorials, many explainers, but just because it is in the newspaper doesn't mean that you have to read it. You have to save your time. So whatever is important, I'm discussing with you. If I'm leaving something, rest be assured 90% that it is not at all related or important for your examination, right? If you want to be an activist, then you go ahead and read it. But for the sake of your examination, especially these big editorials, most of you would be writing your exam next year or next to next year. You won't be taking anything out of this. As a matter of fact, it would distort your ideology, right? Whatever your ideology, be it right, left, centrist, but it should be your own, right? Don't let these people fool you. So that is why I don't get into any and every editorial. That is our stand on this channel. Rest we don't know. Then 10 dead after Typhoon Goni slams Philippines. So this Typhoon Goni is hitting Philippines. Now this one, China to begin construction of Sichuan-Tibet railway section near India border. Small article but very, very important. So let's look at it. So China is all set to begin the construction of strategic Sichuan-Tibet railway between Yan in southwest Sichuan province and Linzi in Tibet, close to Indian border in Arunachal Pradesh, state-run media reported. So this is what it is. This is Ningchi, right? So this is the station and it also has an airport. Now this could have both civil and military applications because they have all the lines and infrastructure. So they could be easily mobilizing their troops here as well. This is Lhasa, capital of Tibet, and this is the other railway network. Again, this is coming from Xining in China to Lhasa in Tibet. So this is China-Tibet train route and this is the new track that they are making. Then again, this is Shigate. This is also near Sikkim border. So basically these are Chinese developments near Indian border. That is why we are also ramping up our infrastructure. And like I told you, in West Bengal, we are going to station our next squadron of the Rafales precisely for this reason, to counter such bases that China is building. They're looking like civilian constructions, but they are actually military bases of sorts, right? What else is the need to have airports in this region? And when we try to revive our airstrips, China has a problem, but we have been doing that, right? And they were known as advanced landing gears, and we have revived so many advanced landing gears in Arunachal. So it is not as if we are sleeping, right? So we will be giving them a challenge, don't worry. Now this is the, again, Sichuan-Tibet railways. It is starting from Chengdu and coming to Lhasa, right? And this is the region, Ningchi, we've already seen. And this is the other one, Qinghai to Tibet railway, Xining to Lhasa. So the Sichuan-Tibet Railway is the second such project in Tibet after Qinghai-Tibet Railway. It will go through the southeast of the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau, one of the world's most geologically active areas. So there are many earthquakes here. Yet China is building infrastructure to counter India. And number two, to change the demography of the Tibet region. It is trying to push more and more Han Chinese in the Tibet region. It tries to do the same everywhere. In Inner Mongolia, it is doing the same thing. In Xinjiang, it is doing the same thing. And also in Tibet. So it will start from Chengdu. This is about the route. This will cut the journey time from Chengdu to Lhasa from 48 hours to 13 hours. So see, this is Chengdu and Lhasa. So this is a warning for both Tibet and also for India, right? Lingzi also has an airport, one of the 5 built by China in the Himalayan region. So these airports are basically army or military installations that are being disguised as civil installations. Then Amazon contentions, misconceived RRVL, again Amazon versus future. So folks, that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel. Also press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos, and please give us a thumbs up if you liked our videos. Also connect with us on our Instagram page UPSC for everyone, and please connect with us on our Telegram page where you can access the PDFs of the videos that I'll be posting daily, right? So see you next time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe, and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.